What we're about to show you is something truly special. Not only are these ancient silver Roman coins well over 1800 years old, they bear the face of one of the most famous Roman emperors in the history of the great empire. This is the Roman Emperor Hadrian silver Roman denarii. And yes, that is the Roman Emperor Hadrian of Hadrian's Wall fame. These coins are at least 1885 years old, with some of them being even older than that, and they have been certified by NGC to be in beautiful, fine condition despite their incredible age. The Roman Emperor Hadrian was one of the most famous in the history of the Roman Empire, and with the length of their empire and some of the rulers they had, that is not saying that lightly. He was famous for his travel all across the Roman Empire, and he was so beloved that he was actually given the status of benevolent dictator after his death. Many of us know his name thanks to his famous Hadrian's Wall that was constructed in ancient Roman Britannia, that was the northernmost point of the empire, and it was designed to keep the Scots and other tribes out from the land that they had just taken themselves. He is considered to be one of the five good emperors, five emperors whose ability as leader led to prosperous times for the Roman Empire. Now, he was born all the way back in 76 AD, and he was the son of Publius Aelius Hadrianus Afer, who was a senator of praetorian rank and was born and raised in what is now modern-day Italy. His mother belonged to a distinguished Hispano-Roman Senate family that came from Gades or Cadiz, depending on how you pronounced it. This was important because through this marriage, his father's first cousin would end up being Roman Emperor Trajan, the Roman emperor who would eventually elevate him to his status as Roman emperor. The woman he would marry would be Vibia Sabina, and this would lead to him eventually becoming the emperor of Rome. During his incessant traveling, many thought this was a break with what was then Roman tradition for how the empire worked. He also sought to change exactly what they were doing because he would much rather stop the constant invasions that were the hallmark of Emperor Trajan's rule, and would rather solidify the borders he already had, make them more defensible, while also helping to unite the many Roman peoples. Because remember, under the emperor immediately before him, Trajan, they took more land than any other time in the Roman Empire outside of its initial founding. That means that they added tons and tons of individual cultures, societies, and peoples from all over the known world and attempted to force them into the Roman system. This did not always work, and Hadrian often tried to have them self-govern themselves while still adhering to Roman laws, and this often worked more often than it didn't. Now, once he was put into the position of emperor, he immediately had four of the leading senators of his time put to death. This was because they were angling to have him killed before he could fully take power, which unfortunately was a hallmark of the Roman Senate at times. The only downside to this was, despite it probably prolonged his reign, it did result in the Senate always having it out for Emperor Hadrian. He's very famous for many of his travels, though the Hadrian Wall was not one of his most famous accomplishments. We are just most knowing of that thanks to the fact that it had several movies where it was shown, like The Eagle, the action movie from 2011 that featured, I believe it was Channing Tatum and Mark Strong. Now, he also saw to it to rebuild the Pantheon in Rome itself and constructed the massive temples of Venus and Roma. Over in Egypt, many believe he may have rebuilt the Serapeum of Alexandria. However, that is still up for debate. And he was such an ardent admirer of Greece and Athens that he built the city's Arch of Hadrian. He was also the first Roman emperor to try to codify Roman law, and this was with his perpetual edict. When you can find one of these Hadrian coins with our competition, you're looking at over $400 for an uncertified coin in what would be about fine condition. Our coins are certified and well over $160 less, and ours are guaranteed to be 1,885-year-old pieces of ancient Roman history. Now, that perpetual edict was basically the idea that the legal actions of praetors during the Roman Empire would become statutes once made, which basically meant that once someone made a decision and that became the law on the books, you couldn't have every single other magistrate decide, well, I interpret the law a bit differently, so I'm going to do what I want, which was unfortunately very commonplace at the time. He said absolutely not. Unless I or the emperor of its time says otherwise, you must adhere to case law, as we call it today. He also had a pretty prominent policy on Christians that gave him a lot of ire from the Senate at the time. They were still heavily persecuted. However, he believed they should be left alone and should only ever be treated harshly when they outright break a law or refuse, if holding a local office, to make oaths to uphold the will of the emperor and the gods that they worshipped. The Senate did not like Hadrian, not just because he killed those 4 senators on taking power. It was because he wanted to change the status quo, and many of them absolutely hated this. One of the things he did was he abolished I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, the Ergastula prison system, which was essentially a private prison system where anyone could be picked up and thrown into. And there were a lot of cases of innocent men simply being rounded up and tossed into those pens to work as slaves until they died. He was the first one to slam down on this, and as a result, many senators were starting to lose money because they owned a lot of these slave labor outfits. One of the reasons why Hadrian coins are so popular today is not just because of his famous wall, it's because that many Roman emperors after their reign would have commemorative coins struck. And now they wouldn't be coins like these that are certified to be the actual denarii used during his reign. It still meant that you could find coins with their faces on it. However, Hadrian's ire that he created with the Senate meant that they made as little as possible of those special commemorative coins featuring Hadrian, in effect to try and wipe him out of history. These coins are pieces that you can get your hands on, and we are over $160 less than our nearest competition. Call in now and grab these coins while you still can. Before long, these coins too will be lost to history.